What happens when someone uses AI instead of a therapist? Something new is happening in the space where people used to sit with distress quietly, or call a friend, or eventually make a therapy appointment. They open a chat window instead. AI tools designed for conversation, or simply general AI assistants people have discovered work surprisingly well for emotional support, are being used, often daily, by people who describe them as genuinely helpful, in ways they find difficult to dismiss. And the question worth sitting with is not whether this is good or bad. It's more precise than that. What does AI actually offer in this space, and what does it not? What AI does well is real. It's available at any hour, without an appointment, without cost in most cases, without the social complexity of being seen by another person who will remember this moment. For someone who finds it hard to articulate what's wrong, a conversation with an AI can function as a kind of rehearsal, a way of finding language for something still formless. It doesn't judge. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't have its own needs pressing against the conversation. And for people who've spent years editing themselves in relationships, learning what's safe to say and what isn't, that absence of judgment can feel like relief. There's something worth sitting with here, though, about what that relief actually is. Because the things that make AI feel safe are also, precisely, the things that make it different from therapy. A presence that never tires, never has its own reactions, never brings anything of itself into the exchange, is a presence that cannot do what a therapist does. And what a therapist does, at its core, is not primarily provide information, or ask good questions, or reflect feelings back accurately. It's to be genuinely present, to be a real person who is actually affected by what's happening in the room, whose steadiness in the face of something difficult is meaningful because it could have gone the other way. That's the thing AI can't replicate. Not because the responses aren't sophisticated, but because nothing is actually at stake for an AI in the encounter. When a client brings something shameful into a therapy session and the therapist doesn't flinch, that matters in a particular way. The therapist had the option to flinch. They are a real person with reactions who chose steadiness. That choice is what makes it evidence. Evidence that being fully known doesn't have to end in rejection. An AI cannot provide that evidence. It can provide the appearance of it. But the nervous system, which is what therapy is ultimately working with, is quite good at knowing the difference between a real relationship and a simulated one, even when the simulation is impressive. This doesn't mean that using AI for emotional support is without value. For some people, it's a first step, a way of beginning to organize an inner experience that was previously wordless, a lower stakes entry point toward eventually seeking something more. What it tends not to be is a substitute for the experience of being truly known by another person, which is the mechanism through which most deep change in therapy actually happens. There's also a subtler risk worth naming. AI conversation can produce the feeling of having done something with distress, without requiring the exposure that real change tends to need. It can feel like the work of self-reflection while functioning more like its outline. The same way insight without a place to land can become its own pattern, the understanding substituting for the doing. AI conversation can become a loop that feels productive and stays in place. Perhaps the most honest thing to say about AI and therapy is this. AI can help someone find words for their experience. It cannot be the relationship in which that experience gets worked through. And it's the relationship, the actual imperfect, sometimes uncomfortable experience of being seen by another person who is genuinely present, that tends to be where the real work happens. What makes that kind of relationship possible is something therapists spend a great deal of attention building. We'll explore that next.